I never heard that. I don't know if we have anything like that here. Hey folks, how's it going? Hopefully you guys had a fantastic day. We are checking out Why You Can't Buy Dasani Water in Britain by Tom Scott. This was recommended to me by quite a few people after I watched the Only Fools and Horses episode, Mother Nature's Son, where Dale came up with the whole scheme to just bottle tap water and sell it off as high quality like mineral spring water. Tricking the guy who ran like the health food store. They were supposed to get rid of some drums of chemicals the proper way. They threw them inside a body of water which contaminated all the local water. So I'm guessing this is going to be about contaminated water or Dasani selling tap water off as spring water maybe. So I'm guessing it's going to follow a similar thing, and that's why I was recommended. So let's just go ahead and jump into it, folks. We'll talk about it more at the end.
This is a bottle of Dasani, Coca-Cola's brand of bottled water. It is basically Coke without the syrup. Like most American bottled water, it is tap water that's been purified and then had tiny amounts of minerals deliberately added back into it. Except not quite. This is a British Dasani bottle from 2004, which is the first and last time that you could ever buy Dasani water in the UK. And the story of why it failed here is one of the greatest marketing disaster stories in history. But it wasn't until I started searching through newspapers and TV shows from 2004, that I found that the tale is a little more complicated than I thought. A little more complicated than a lot of the world thought. And it starts years earlier. Through most of the 1980s, bottled water was something expensive that got ordered at fancy restaurants, and it was only by the early 90s that it had started to become a thing that everyday people might want to buy. On Christmas Day, 1992, British sitcom Only Fools and Horses made fun of that trend by having its main character, lovable rogue Del Boy, sell tap water from South London as Peckham Spring bottled water.
That's a good episode.
It's a slow and old-fashioned comedy by today's standards, and the episode is really weirdly paced. You're two-thirds of the way through before anyone actually starts bottling water. But because it was the Christmas Day episode in 1992, back when most British households only had 4 channels of television, that show was watched by more than 20 million people. More than a third of the entire British population. And the final joke of that episode is that the water is contaminated by some chemical barrels that Del Boy dumped in a local pond in the first act. It is, to be fair, a brilliant closing gag, and it's one that's stuck in the British psyche. The BBC reran the episode another 5 times in the years after. It'll have been on cable and satellite channels many more times than that. I would guess that by 2004, when Dasani launched, about half of the country, maybe more, could understand Peckham Spring as a reference, or at least remembered that time Del Boy tried to bottle tap water. Now, under UK law, mineral water is a protected term. Mineral water must come from a certified underground spring. It must not be chemically treated in any way, and it's generally under heavy regulation. And back in 2004, the perception was that bottled water meant mineral water. Why else would you buy it? It's something you can't get at home. Over in America, though, the home of Coca-Cola, the perception of bottled water was that it was just that. It's water in a bottle. You were paying for the convenience and the taste, and it didn't really matter whether that came from the ground or from a water purification factory. To be fair, there are large parts of America where the tap water does not taste or smell good, and their federal standards aren't great, particularly compared to Europe.
There's quite a few places that have like well water and stuff. That's when I can tell the difference. If somebody has well water, it has like a nickely or like a metallic taste. It has a weird taste. But for the most part, I can't really tell the difference out of the tap. And I don't think there's a regulatory commission here for mineral water either. I never heard that. When I was watching an episode of Only Fools and Horses, and the guy was like, he's one of the people who sit on the board and stuff. I was like, I never heard that. I don't know if we have anything like that here. As you said, really people just buy bottled water for convenience. I do have friends that won't drink particular water, and one of them is Dasani. I have a buddy that only drinks water. She hates Dasani, and I think Nestle's the other one she doesn't like. Can't remember. She said they have like a weird aftertaste.
And anyone who has ever taken a vacation to Disney World, for example, will know that the tap water around Orlando can smell a little sulphury. But in the UK, the perception was different. You were buying mineral water because it was natural. It had been filtered through rocks for eons. It was classier and fancier and perhaps healthier than what came out of your tap. That's rubbish, of course. We have some of the safest tap water in the world, and did back then too, but advertising is powerful, and the idea was that bottled water was filtered and pure straight from the earth. It was somehow better. Coca-Cola were trying to introduce an American-style filtered tap water to a British mineral water market. Now, they were not lying about their water. Their marketing didn't use the phrase tap water. They preferred purified water, but they weren't lying. It says on the back of the bottle, their process precisely delivers pure, still water. The public might have assumed it was mineral water, but Coca-Cola never said that. In fact, what they had done is spend a long time with focus groups, taste testing and refining the mineral balance and the flavour of the water, making a version of Dasani that was ideal for the British palate. Dasani launched with the first stage of what was going to be a £7 million advertising campaign on February 10th, 2004, and it went okay. For weeks, the British public either didn't notice or didn't care that it was tap water, the same way Americans don't seem to care. There were occasional rough patches for the launch, like shopkeepers in Buxton, a town famous for its mineral water, complaining about being forced by their contracts with Coca-Cola to replace bottles of the local water in coolers with Dasani. Or the regulators launching an investigation into whether Coca-Cola should be using the word pure on the label.
If you work in retail, I'm pretty sure you know this probably in UK as well, vendors are really aggressive when it comes to like pushing a new product on the shelf and getting space and stuff for it. And they'll bother you non-stop. They'll push you to change like your planograms or modulars or whatever terminology you use. They push hard to get a cooler in the store. Dude, it's really annoying. So I can see people getting frustrated with them, like trying to force their stuff on the shelf or like losing all their product in general or something like that. They are really pushy. Never had anybody say they're going to pull all their product, but they do little things. I want to go into detail because it's too freaking long, but they do little things when you don't give them space and stuff.
But on the whole, went okay. A lot of articles written more recently claim that Coca-Cola's first blunder was copying an American Dasani slogan, "Can't live without spunk," which has a very different meaning in the UK.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's true. The only actual evidence I could find of that slogan is a screenshot on one tech news website that liked innuendo.
Can't do what I
Looks
see,
like a web designer reused some American ad images in one part of a Flash-based website that almost no one saw. No other article from the time, that I can find anyway, mentions that slogan at all. You know, the advertising was put together by Coca-Cola's UK division. They're not stupid. In fact, the advertising team was probably breathing a sigh of relief. All things considered, the launch had been successful. And then it all went wrong. Very, very quickly. Exactly 3 weeks after launch, March the 2nd, most of the major British newspapers simultaneously put out big stories announcing that Dasani was bottled tap water. Most of them mentioned that episode of Only Fools and Horses, and all of them made a lot of noise implying that it was a rip-off, although perhaps they didn't put it in quite so few words. And back when a lot of people actually read physical newspapers, front-page news saying that your product is a rip-off does make a big difference to sales. But why was it suddenly news everywhere at the same time after 3 silent weeks? The missing piece of the puzzle is one journalist called Graham Hiscott, who worked for the Press Association. And as he tells it, as part of a brilliant half-hour documentary made later that year, he happened to be flipping through an issue of The Grocer, an industry magazine, at work one day. And, you know, that's an event that the documentary asked him to recreate for some reason. Now, The Grocer is an ideal source for journalists looking for the next story about a product recall or a weird marketing strategy, and that issue of the magazine had a feature on bottled water, and there was just one line in one article describing Dasani as a mineral-enhanced treated tap water, which when written so clearly seemed odd. So Graham called Coca-Cola and they said, yes, Dasani is treated tap water from the main supply at their bottling plant right there in Sidcup, South London. 10 miles from Peckham, where that episode of Only Fools and Horses was set.
Damn, dude.
A few hours after that phone call, there was an article on the Press Association Newswire about where Dasani came from. Articles on the Newswire don't usually go straight to the public, they go to other journalists first who can use them or adapt them. And the editors at most of the newspapers correctly decided that yes, this was something their readers would be interested in. 6 months earlier, when Coca-Cola was setting out preparations for their Dasani launch, The Grocer had run a small article about it. And there's a line in there that's prophetic. One senior buyer warned that some consumers may be put off by the water's lack of provenance. And now, Coke bottles tap water for 3,000% markup was on the front pages. But Coca-Cola and Dasani soldiered on. That didn't kill the brand. They put more marketing budget behind it. They gave away free bottles in supermarkets. Another article in The Grocer from back then quotes Coca-Cola's UK marketing director. There cannot be many people who do not know about Dasani now. I cannot imagine how much we would have had to spend to get that level of awareness. There is a theory that there's no such thing as bad publicity, after all. The final nail in the coffin was the contamination. They'd had a bad batch of calcium chloride delivered right here. It's one of the chemicals they use in the purification process, and tests revealed that their water contained above the legal limits of bromate, a cancer-causing chemical. There wasn't anywhere near enough in the water to do harm, but there was enough that it was outside the legal limit. So within 24 hours, every unsold bottle was recalled back here.
What bad luck, dude, to be near Peckham and to have contaminated water.
and the
bad
shelves
luck,
were
bro.
empty. Just like Del Boy, not only had Coca-Cola sold tap water in a bottle, but they sold contaminated tap water in a bottle. Dasani never returned to shops, never launched in France or Germany like they were planning, and to this day, if you type Dasani into Google UK, you get results about the disaster. News reports from 2004 on the first page. Coca-Cola launched other water brands, of course, but as far as I can tell, they all look to be spring waters or mineral waters. They're not hooking up a purifier to the tap. Not over here. There are other folks selling purified tap water, of course, but that's usually the cheap option on the shelf. Not that it matters. It's all just water. And I reckon Coca-Cola could absolutely have made this work. Maybe they still could. There is a world in which one journalist didn't use the words tap water, or another journalist didn't happen to look at one particular article, and where the launch went just fine, and Britain got used to the fact that drinking bottled, purified tap water could be normal. After all, if it had been a popular brand, no one would want to admit that their purchases might be questionable. It's a lot easier to just say, yeah, that's fine, of course, I know it's tap water, than go, hang on, I've been paying how much for what? And worry that you might have been ripped off.
Yeah.
I don't think the Dasani disaster was inevitable, but it happened. And all that's left, 16 years later, is a few bottles like this.
Damn. Dude, what bad luck. This is really good. This is really, really good. And really did tie really well to the Only Fools and Horses episode. I definitely understand why you guys recommended this to me, for sure. Not only was it mentioned, but it ties so close to the episode as well. Besides his bottles glowing. As I said, I have a friend who doesn't like Dasani water, and that's all she drinks is water. No pop, no juices, nothing. So she tastes the difference between water. As I said, I really can't taste the difference unless I'm drinking somebody who has well water. That's when I usually can taste it. I've never been anywhere with like sulfur smelling water or anything like that. The water on the tap, I've never had any issues with here. When buying bottled water here, I've always gone for the cheaper stuff. I had Vols like once or twice, Fiji here and there, but usually I go for whatever's cheapest, and it's for convenience, just so I can get something to drink really quick. But I've never had a preference when it comes to bottled water. But this is wild, man. I definitely appreciate you guys recommending this to me. It's just a string of bad luck tied to a popular episode of Only Fools and Horses. An episode that brought in more than 20 million viewers. That is bananas. Isn't it crazy how those large productions, something like Only Fools and Horses and all these shows, are bringing those amount of views? And it takes an entire team, production studio, and the whole shebang to make that. And now an individual on camera by themselves and bringing the same amount of views. One day I'll make a video of it so you guys can see it. In Gary, there's a spring that's always flowing on Clark Road. It said it comes from a natural spring somewhere. I've never actually seen the spring. I never went and looked at it as a kid. But there's a giant concrete block, right? And there's a pipe that my uncle told me ever since I was a kid, and my mom and everybody said it comes from a spring. And growing up poor and a kid, you didn't really question it. And I believe it's still flowing now. And I said I'm going to go over there one day and see if I can give you guys a video of it. And there's just a pipe out of a concrete block, and it's just water flowing out of it. It's been flowing since I was a kid. We'll go there with empty gallons and fill those up. And that's how we cooked our food and all that jazz when our lights and water and stuff was out back in the day. As I said, growing up poor, it was an old reliable spring that never let you down whenever you showed up and you're in need of some water. All right, folks, man, that is it. That is all for this one. Hopefully, guys are happy, safe, and healthy. I'll see you in the next one. Later.